grayish, gelatinous mass pulsated rhythmically, as if trying to escape its bony confines. The patient's torso had disappeared completely, like a magician's assistant's, under long blue drapes. As I walked toward the patient, I suddenly became aware of my own pulsations. Could this blob of overly congealed gelatin really be the epicenter of who we are? Dazzling lights crisscrossed my vision, and I could barely register what Dr. R was saying. The next thing I knew, I was being lowered onto a chair by one of the surgical nurses. Humiliating? You bet. But that was not the reason I did not go into brain surgery. Ultimately, that was more a fantasy meets reality decision. When the air hits the brain, you're never quite the same, was a common saying in neurosurgery back in the 1980s. At that time, surgery on the brain often left patients severely debilitated, though alive. In the intervening years, of course, things have changed for the better, but my own experience prompted me to think of other ways of working with the brain. And, in a circuitous way, I did. The ear. Under the guidance of my extraordinary mentor, Dr. Rod Lusk, during my fellowship at Washington University in St. Louis, I learned the skills necessary to help ensure the success of cochlear implantation. Cochlear implantation is, to me, one of the most elegant of surgeries. Performed under a high-powered microscope that magnifies the inner ear from the size of a tiny pea to the size of a quarter, it relies on small, precise instruments that match its small, precise movements. I operate with the room lights off, the single light beam from the microscope a spotlight on the star of the show, the ear. The microscope's penetrating beam has been said to cast an almost romantic halo around the patient and surgeon. And while many surgeons operate with music, I prefer my operating room to be quiet and calm, with only the hum of my drill as backdrop to my concentration on the surgical procedure. My decision to become a pediatric head and neck surgeon specializing in cochlear implantation was serendipitous, because the confluence of two historic medical events was about to usher in a golden age for children born deaf. In 1993, the National Institutes of Health recommended that all newborns undergo a hearing evaluation, the universal newborn screening, before leaving the hospital. This astute public health initiative plummeted the age of the diagnosis of deafness from 3 years to 3 months. No longer could parents and pediatricians rest comfortably with, "He's just a slow talker," or "Her older brother does all her talking," when, in fact, the child was deaf. But its significance was increased exponentially because it coincided with the development of a neurologic miracle, the cochlear implant. The possibility of changing the life course for millions of deaf children had arrived. The cochlear implant. The brain and neural structures in the human body are generally unforgiving. From cerebral palsy to strokes, from spinal cord injuries to football-related head trauma, making better rather than correcting tends to be the medical dictum. Hearing loss is a spectacular instance where something can, in fact, be done. In 1984, the first single-channel cochlear implant for adults, allowing sound detection and some awareness of voice, although not hearing as we know it, was approved by the FDA. This was followed in 1990, at about the same time as the new recommendations for universal newborn screening, by a new multi-channel cochlear implant with complex speech processing ability, approved for young children. For the first time in history, a child born deaf would be able to hear at an age when the brain pathways for language were being created. It's important to understand why the timing of these two coinciding events was so critical. By the end of age 3, the human brain, including its 100 billion neurons, has completed